Happiness is not a destination you must strive to reach. It does not lie at the end of the road where you possess enough money, fame, or perfect relationships. Happiness is not a reward granted only to those who live by the book or have a smooth life. It is a subtle sense, silently present, but often overlooked in the simplest moments you tend to ignore. This may sound abstract, but if you've ever gone through a day filled with material abundance and still felt empty, you understand this feeling better than any theory can explain. I once had a conversation with a patient in my clinic, a man around 40 years old, well-groomed with a good job, a nice home, and well-behaved children. But his voice faltered as he said, "I don't know why I still feel dissatisfied. Everything seems fine, but I don't feel at peace." That sentence encapsulates the sentiment millions of people live with, having everything by society's standards, yet lacking an inner sense of fulfillment. And the irony is, the more you have, the more you feel something is missing. It's a loop of the mind that isn't guided by accurate awareness. Stoicism, the ancient Roman philosophy once practiced by leaders like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, doesn't just speak about emotional control or courage in adversity. It is also a roadmap to true happiness, the kind that comes from within, unconditional, independent of results, and far from grandiose. At the core of Stoicism, there are three elements that the wise old man in the story passed on to Mark, the young man who began his journey to seek happiness: gratitude, acceptance, and love. Let's begin with gratitude. You cannot feel enough if you never recognize what you already have. Your mind is biologically wired for survival, meaning it constantly scans for danger, compares yourself to others, and alerts you of what's lacking. So unless you consciously direct your attention to what is present, your brain will continuously pull you into a state of subtle dissatisfaction. Modern neuroscience confirms that regularly practicing gratitude activates the prefrontal cortex, the area that governs positive emotions, behavioral regulation, and sound decision-making. Just by pausing every night to write down 3 things you're grateful for, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, you are changing how your brain processes reality. You're no longer living reactively, you begin living with awareness. Next is acceptance. In the modern world, where people are always trying to control everything from 10-year plans to the emotions of those around them, acceptance is often misunderstood as surrender. But Stoicism doesn't teach resignation. It teaches you to see reality clearly and to stop resisting what cannot be changed. You cannot control the rain, but you can choose to walk through it in peace. When you accept that life includes constant fluctuations and that outcomes are beyond your control, you begin to detach from internal clinging. Scientific research shows that individuals who can accept reality instead of resisting or avoiding it have lower cortisol levels, higher psychological resilience after adversity, and lower risks of depression. This isn't idealism. It's a biological strategy optimized through millennia of evolution. And finally, love. Not the fleeting, hormone-driven romantic kind, but love as a vital force. Love for what you do, love for the people around you, and most importantly, love for yourself. A person cannot be happy if they look at themselves with contempt. A person cannot radiate positivity if they don't feel worthy of love. Happiness cannot pass through a closed heart. It needs space, and love is what opens that space. Whatever you're doing, even something as simple as making a cup of tea, if you put a little care into it, you are reestablishing your connection with the world. Neuroscience calls this nervous system synchronization, where your inner positive state spreads through your communication, expressions, and even biological energy, making others feel safe around you. 3 things: gratitude, acceptance, and love. Seem simple, yet they are the deepest foundation for emotional stability, long-lasting happiness, and a meaningful life. There's no complex formula, no need for more assets, fame, or perfect relationships. You just need to return inward and notice what you've forgotten amidst the rush of life. And when you live by these three principles, you no longer need to search for happiness. You are already living in it. Mark changed not because he discovered something new, but because he began to see value in what he had once taken for granted. When you can feel fulfilled with the small things, you're no longer afraid of lack. When you can accept difficulty, you are no longer defeated by surprises. When you can love, regardless of circumstances, you become a source of unconditional happiness. And when others ask you how you remain calm in a chaotic world, your answer won't need to be long. Happiness is not a destination, it is a journey. And I'm on that journey every day with gratitude, acceptance, and a heart full of love. There are days when life feels strangely heavy. Everything seems to go on as usual, work, responsibilities, the people around you. But inside, there's a kind of mental depletion you can't quite name. You don't feel sad, but you don't feel happy either. You're not failing, but you're not excited. That's when you need something simple that you often forget: laughter. Laughter is one of the most natural human responses, yet it's the first thing we lose as we grow up. As a child, you could laugh at a falling leaf, a silly sound, or even for no reason at all. But over time, as life becomes more serious, you begin to restrict your laughter, reserving it for appropriate times, formal occasions, or worse, when I have time. And in doing so, you deny yourself one of the most natural remedies your brain and nervous system were designed to enjoy. I want you to recall a moment when you laughed for real, not polite or social laughter, but a genuine, belly-shaking, tear-inducing laugh that left your body relaxed and light. That's not just an emotional reaction, it's a full physiological reset. In the moment you laugh, a cascade of neural responses occurs. Endorphins are released, creating pleasure and reducing pain. Serotonin levels rise, lifting your mood, and cortisol, the stress hormone, drops significantly. You don't need medication or advanced techniques, just a moment where you allow yourself to let go and laugh. Even Stoic philosophers like Epictetus and Seneca, known for their calm and rational minds, never denied the value of laughter. On the contrary, they believed emotions are only a concern when they control you. But if you choose positivity, if you choose to smile and laugh, that's a sign of supreme emotional self-mastery. Epictetus once said, "People are not disturbed by events, but by their view of those events." And sometimes the lightest view is to allow yourself to laugh instead of tense up. I once had a patient with mild depression who described his days as a gray wall passing before my eyes. Instead of prescribing more medication, I suggested he join a laughter therapy group where people gather simply to practice laughing. It sounded silly, but after just 2 weeks, he returned with a completely different energy. I realized I hadn't laughed for months. And just by pretending to laugh for a few minutes each morning, my mind began to soften. Science confirms this. Even forced laughter activates the same brain regions associated with genuine joy. In other words, if you wait to feel happy before you laugh, you've been doing it backward. Laugh first, and joy will follow. Laughter is also a way to regain control in situations that feel out of hand. You're stuck in Monday morning traffic, late for a meeting, phone out of battery. You could get angry and spiral downward, or you could see the whole chaotic scene as a kind of absurd comedy and laugh, not because it's observer's seat instead of getting trapped. That is the behavior of someone who has mastery over their nervous system. In a study at Loma Linda University, Professor Lee Burke demonstrated that just a few minutes of daily laughter can lower blood pressure, boost the immune system, and significantly improve cognitive and work performance. In fact, frequent laughter is even associated with longer lifespan, not because it's magical, but because it helps maintain neurological balance, reduces chronic stress responses, and improves sleep quality. You might be wondering, I'm not a funny person. How do I laugh more? You don't need to be a comedian. You just need to reclaim your sensitivity to small, joyful details. a quirky expression from someone, an awkward line you said, an absurd moment in daily life. You don't need a big reason to laugh. You just need to allow yourself not to take everything so seriously. Try this. Set a silly wallpaper on your phone. Write down awkward moments to reread later, or follow positive, lighthearted content that makes you giggle each morning. You're not just entertaining yourself. You're training your nervous system. Laughter doesn't make you lazy or unserious. It makes you stronger so you can stay serious in a sustainable way. Laughter doesn't mean you're avoiding reality. It helps you remain clear-eyed in the face of reality without being swallowed by it. And laughter doesn't take away your depth. It just makes that depth a little less suffocating. So when tomorrow comes, don't wait for a reason to be happy. Choose any reason at all to smile. Call the friend who always cracks jokes. Allow yourself to laugh at a meaningless video. Make laughter a habit, not a reward. Because if you wait for everything to be perfect before you laugh, you might spend a lifetime in silence. But if you can laugh even when things aren't okay, that laughter becomes a signal to your nervous system. I'm still here and I'm still alive. And that is a message more powerful than any speech. Do you remember the last time you stepped outside and truly felt the wind brush your skin, the sun gently touch your forehead, or the quiet scent of grass slipping into your breath? Not stepping out hurriedly for work and not while waiting for a bus on a dusty street. I'm talking about real connection, where you pause, become present, and allow nature to touch you, not through a screen, not through a car window, but with your living body and open heart. If you can't remember the last time that happened, you're not alone. In the modern world, most of us have traded that primal connection for speed, convenience, and glowing screens. Humans were born into nature. Before there were clocks, we used the sun to tell time. Before digital calendars, we sensed the seasons through the wind, the color of leaves, and the scent of damp earth. But over time, our life rhythms were reprogrammed. Artificial lighting, temperature-controlled rooms, and wearable devices that count steps instead of simply walking. And we've forgotten that no matter how intelligent our bodies are, they function best when in sync with nature's rhythm. Those inexplicable feelings of boredom, prolonged fatigue, or lack of direction may not come from your mind. They may come from something much simpler. You've been disconnected from nature for too long. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." This isn't just a philosophical phrase, it's a reminder of a balanced way of living. When you observe a flowing river, a falling leaf, or a sky changing colors throughout the afternoon, you are being taught a wordless lesson. There's no need to force, no need to rush. Everything has its own time to unfold, and so do you. Your body understands this. It's just that your mind has been overwhelmed by the pressures of modern civilization. Modern neuroscience calls this the attention restoration theory. In other words, when you are in nature, your brain, which is usually tense from processing an overload of messages, emails, and social pressure, begins to relax. Just 20 minutes of contact with a natural environment can significantly reduce cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Your vision calms under the green of trees. Your hearing tunes in to the sound of wind instead of notifications, and your heartbeat returns to balance. You don't need a complicated therapy. You just need a small park, a courtyard with trees, or simply an open window letting sunlight touch your eyes. Not through curtains or your phone screen. In Japan, they call this Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. Not for anything grand, but simply walking through a forest with no goal, no step count, no need for conversation. Studies on Shinrin-yoku show that just 2 hours a week in nature can improve immune function, lower blood pressure, increase focus, and soothe a mind overloaded with information. Much like reconnecting with an old friend, reconnecting with nature is an act of healing. It doesn't reduce your workload, but it gives you the strength to return to it with clarity. If you live in a city, you might be thinking, I don't have a forest, I don't have a beach. How am I supposed to connect? But nature doesn't require you to go far. You just need to walk down the street without staring into your phone. Notice a wild plant growing by the sidewalk. Watch a cloud shift shape at noon or sit still for 10 minutes under the early morning sun. And you've already started reconnecting. What matters is not the scale, but the presence. The more finely tuned your attention, the more you receive from the smallest of things. I remember once stopping beside an old tree in the middle of the city just to place my hand on its rough bark and listen to the wind rustle through the leaves. In that moment, I didn't need to try to calm down. My mind became still on its own. That's when I understood nature doesn't need you to understand it. It just needs you to show up. And when you show up, nature responds with a balance you've been missing. Stoicism teaches that to live in accordance with nature is the path to wisdom. But living according to nature isn't just about accepting life's circumstances or understanding its laws. It's about living in connection with the natural world as an inseparable part of it. When you stand in nature, you're reminded that you are not the center of the universe, but you are an important part of this living system. And from that place, even your biggest personal problems begin to be put in proper proportion. You stop feeling like everything is urgent. You realize every season has its winds. Every tree needs time to grow, and so do you. So if you're feeling exhausted, don't go looking for answers in another plan. Step outside, slow down, let daylight touch your eyes, listen to the rustling leaves, let your heart settle for no particular reason. Because sometimes, just by standing still in the natural world, life begins to heal you on its own. No drama, no noise, just human and real. There are small habits that, when maintained consistently, silently transform the entire quality of your life. Among them, waking up early is one of the simplest shifts, yet holds an unbelievably profound impact. Because waking up early is not just about changing your wake-up time. It's the first action of the day that declares you are in control of your time, you are not being dragged by the chaos of the world, and you are ready to live a day with intention, clarity, and awareness. You might be thinking, I'm just not a morning person. But that's not entirely true. Neuroscience has shown that most of us are capable of adjusting our biological clock, our internal circadian rhythm, through training and environmental control. In other words, you can become a morning person, not because of some natural gift, but because of choice and consistency. And when you achieve that, you open up a completely different mode of living where everything happens before the world becomes noisy. Stoicism, the philosophy of those who lived on the battlefield of life, deeply understood the value of the morning. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote in Meditations, "Why do you lie there? Were you born to be cuddled in a warm blanket, or to rise and do the work of a human being?" That question isn't a command, it's an awakening. Morning is the time when you have not yet been invaded by news, notifications, calls, or the noise of society. It's that rare time when you are still truly yourself, not reacting, not pulled, not distracted. It is a golden opportunity to program your mind for the day. I once coached someone in the creative industry. He often stayed up late and felt drained by the end of each day. When he decided to try waking up early, just 30 minutes earlier each week, the first thing he said after a month was, "I never realized how peaceful the world is at 6 a.m., and I never thought I could feel so free." The stillness of the morning isn't just external space. It's the calming of the nervous system before it has to process too much input, before it has to switch into reaction mode. It's the alpha state where the brain is more creative, better at planning, and more attuned to its own depth. Waking up early doesn't mean starting the day with extreme productivity. On the contrary, it allows you to start slowly. And it's this slowness that most of us are missing. You can use that time to meditate, read a few pages of a book, write a few lines in your journal, do light exercise, or simply sit with a cup of coffee and watch the morning light filter through the window. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is that you begin the day not in a rush, not jolted out of sleep by an alarm and thrown into chaos. When you can control the first hour of the day, you'll be surprised at how you begin to control the rest of it too. Neuroscience shows that within the first hour after waking up, natural light directly affects the hypothalamus, thereby setting the body's circadian rhythm for the entire day, impacting energy, mood, focus, and even nighttime sleep quality. Exposure to morning sunlight is one of the most effective ways to regulate your biological clock. When you wake up early and step outside, you're not just physically awake, you're helping your nervous system boot up in the exact way nature designed it to. Another reason waking up early is powerful is that it's a self-affirming act of value. No one forces you to wake up early. No one checks on you. The fact that you get up while the world is still asleep is quiet proof that you value yourself, you value your time, your mind, your future. And each time you repeat that, your self-respect subtly rises. Waking up early isn't about proving anything to others. It's about proving to yourself, I have discipline, I am capable of mastering my life. Of course, waking up early isn't always easy, especially at first. You might feel groggy, mentally fuzzy, but that's just the adjustment period. Just like when you change your diet or your workout routine, the body needs time to adapt. The key is consistency. Don't force yourself to get up at 5 a.m. if you're used to waking at 8. Start with just 15 minutes earlier. More importantly, keep your sleep schedule consistent. Create a gentle evening ritual to signal to your brain that it's time to wind down. Turn off devices. Read a book, take a warm shower, meditate, or write a few lines of gratitude in your journal. Your body will know how to respond if you treat it gently and with order. And perhaps the most important thing I want you to understand is that waking up early is not about doing more. It's about living better. A mindful morning can shape the emotional tone of your entire day. A gentle start can change the way you react to unexpected stress. An hour earlier can be the time you finally begin something you've delayed for too long, reading a book, writing a new page, changing your lifestyle, or simply reconnecting with yourself. In a world where everything moves at lightning speed, waking up early is an act of defiance, but that's exactly where the wisdom lies. When you can go against the crowd to rise from sleep earlier, step into the world with clarity and intention, you are no longer just surviving. You are redesigning how you exist every single day. And if you can master how you begin a day, you will gradually master how you live an entire life. Have you ever felt this way? The day flew by so fast, yet when you looked back, you couldn't clearly recall doing anything truly meaningful. You may have been busy, you may have handled dozens of tasks, responded to countless messages, attended many meetings, but by the end of the day, you still felt empty, vague, and sometimes even dissatisfied. That feeling doesn't come from not doing enough. It comes from not doing anything with real intent, because busyness is easy to fake, but living with intention cannot be faked. Seneca, one of the most profound Stoic philosophers, once said, "It's not that life is too short, it's that we waste much of it." You don't lack time, you're simply spending it unconsciously, getting swept up in unimportant matters, constantly reacting to the world instead of deliberately leading yourself. And if you don't know how you want to live, the world will program you the way it wants. Notifications, phone calls, social expectations, invisible pressures. At that point, you're no longer living, you're merely reacting. Intentional planning isn't about cramming more into your schedule. On the contrary, it's a subtle act of separating the important from the urgent, the things you truly want to do from the things you're dragged into. It's how you reclaim control over your most precious asset, time. And when you learn how to use time properly, you slowly regain the sense that your life has direction. No longer vague, no longer drifting between endless to-dos. Modern neuroscience shows that when you have clear goals and know how to plan with structure, your brain activates the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, decision-making, and sustaining motivation. On the other hand, if you allow yourself to drift between trivial tasks, You activate the limbic system, the instinctual and stress response center. In other words, without a plan, you're prone to fall into prolonged urgency mode, constantly putting out fires, but in truth going nowhere. I've worked with many people who've achieved great financial success, but still felt unfulfilled, not because they lacked anything, but because they no longer felt ownership over their own time. They were controlled by schedules, ruled by email, defined by never-ending deadlines that constantly redefined their sense of purpose. When I asked how many hours this past week actually belonged to you, they fell silent, because the truth is, if you don't protect your time, others will take it. And the best way to protect your time is not to resist everything, but to rearrange everything. Each night before bed, take 10 minutes to write down the 3 most important things you want to accomplish tomorrow. Not an endless list, just 3 things that would make you feel satisfied if done. Then assign a specific time block for each. Don't say, I'll do it when I have time, because when I have time usually means never. Treat them like appointments with yourself, non-negotiable, non-regulable, and respected just as much as you would respect a meeting with the most important person you know. Stoicism emphasizes the distinction between what you can control and what you cannot. You can't stretch time, but how you use it is entirely in your hands. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Get up right now and live as if you had chosen this life with full intent." That doesn't mean doing more than others. It means doing the right thing at the right time with complete awareness. One effective method of planning is to divide your day into time blocks, each block dedicated to a specific type of activity. Morning for deep work, midday for rest, afternoon for social interactions, evening for learning or creativity. When you allocate your time based on clear intent, your brain learns to enter the right mode naturally without needing excessive discipline. That's when you don't have to force yourself to work. You just step into the right frame and let the system run itself. Of course, there will be days when things don't go as planned. Life always throws variables. But what's the difference between someone who lives with intention and someone who lives reactively? It's that the intentional person knows how to return to their path instead of giving up. When plans fall apart, they don't panic. They adjust, accept, and move forward because their goal is not perfection, but progress. Remember, time never stops. You can't keep time, but you can use it like an investment into what helps you grow, what makes your life feel meaningful, what brings you closer to the person you want to become. And if each passing day you can identify at least one thing you did for yourself, for your values, then you didn't waste your time. You lived it right. You don't need an expensive time management app. You don't need a complicated planner. You just need to start each day with one honest question. What is the most worthy thing I can give my time to today? And when you have a clear answer, every other decision becomes much simpler because a person who knows what's worth living for won't be easily distracted by things done just for the sake of it. That person won't fear running out of time because every minute, every hour becomes a conscious choice. Time is not some enemy counting down your youth, your chances, or your success. Time is the asset you already own if you know how to honor and use it like a master. And the person who learns how to master time will sooner or later learn how to master their life. There's a quiet yet common paradox. The closer we get to what we truly love, the more likely we are to hesitate. It sounds irrational, but if you've ever pursued a long-term dream, you'll recognize this feeling. When you've overcome countless obstacles, walked a long road, and suddenly right near the finish line, you feel more exhausted than ever, not because you lack strength, but because your mind starts to echo with doubtful voices. Is this really worth it? What if I fail now after everything? Am I just wasting my time? And the saddest part is many people stop at that exact moment when what they've longed for is only a few steps away. Psychology calls this phenomenon the resistance peak, the moment of highest inner resistance right before achieving something significant. Just like muscles hurt most in the final minutes of an intense workout, or how the steepest slope always lies near the mountain's peak, that's when your body and nervous system are stretched to their limit, not because you're weaker, but because you're crossing your own internal threshold. And it's precisely the uncertainty at the edge of a new life that activates your brain's warning systems, trying to pull you back into the comfort zone. But just like any strength training, if you can push through that final stretch, what you gain isn't just a result, it's resilience. I've observed many talented, passionate people who worked for years chasing something, a meaningful job, a deep relationship, or a creative project. But just a few steps before the end, they stopped. Not because they failed, but because they were drained. Not due to a lack of skill, but a lack of final conviction that said, I deserve this. And at that very point, they handed over their dream to doubt, their hope to an invisible fear they couldn't name. That's as heartbreaking as never having started at all. You need to understand this. The ambiguity in the final stretch is not a mistake. It's a signal of transformation. That's when your nervous system needs a closing move. Either you act based on your initial commitment, or you drift back to square one, carrying a regret far heavier than failure. The regret of having come so close, but not daring to take the final step. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is right, do it. If it is true, speak it. Let nothing else stand in your way." The hesitation, the delay, the turning back, most don't stem from logic, but from fleeting emotions inflated by exhaustion or fear. Neuroscience shows that when your mind is under continuous strain, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational control center, starts to weaken, while the amygdala, the fear center, takes over, meaning things will feel riskier than they are, dangers will appear bigger than they truly are, and the future will seem much more uncertain than it actually is. So when you begin to feel most tired, most anxious, or tempted to pause for clarity, ask yourself again, could it be that I'm very close to what I truly want and this is the hardest part I need to get through? That question won't make you less tired, but it will help you remember the reason to keep going. Great achievements don't come from grand breakthroughs, but from hundreds of persistent steps that no one sees. And sometimes the most important step is the one you no longer feel excited about, but you take it anyway. Because you know commitment doesn't require emotional highs, it requires a solid value system. If you only act when motivated, you'll forever be caught in the cycle of starting and quitting. But if you act based on a purpose deeper than emotion, you'll finish what most people only leave as intention. I want you to picture this. Every time you move closer to what you love, you're actually moving closer to your best self. And it's precisely that growth that requires you to shed the old, which is why you feel uneasy. But that unease is a sign you're on the right path. If you've never doubted yourself, you may not have ventured far enough outside your comfort zone. If you've never wanted to give up, maybe you've never truly poured your heart into anything. Don't quit, not because you'll succeed if you just push a little more, but because you'll never know what could happen if you stop. You'll never know who you might become if you just take a few more steps. You'll never know how deep your dream really runs if you only look at it from the far side of fear. And most of all, you'll never have this same opportunity again in the exact version of who you are today. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready before it presents a challenge. It gives you the challenge to make you ready. So if today is a day when you're doubting yourself, when you feel like quitting everything, when no reason feels strong enough to go on, remember this. On the day you most want to give up is the day you must hold on the tightest. Not because you're weak, but because you've come too far to turn back and you're so close that you can't even see the finish line anymore because it's hiding just behind the thin veil of your exhaustion. Believe in what you love and believe you deserve it. No one else can take that step for you. And no success ever comes to the person who turns away at the doorstep of transformation. You've made it this far. Walk the rest of the way. Don't let your long journey end with an ellipsis, because what you love is very near. And you are at the exact point where unwavering strength matters most. There's a persistent and damaging misunderstanding that kindness is softness, that kind people are easy to take advantage of, that in order to survive in a fiercely competitive world, it's better to hide your goodness and show only sharpness and toughness as a sign of true strength. But I want you to reconsider. Kindness is not weakness. On the contrary, kindness is one of the most sophisticated forms of power because it requires inner strength to choose to treat others well, even when no one obligates you to. Kindness is an expression of self-mastery, of deep understanding of both yourself and how the world works. We're living in an era where toughness is often praised more than warmth. People who speak loudly, react quickly, and retaliate sharply are seen as assertive, as people with strong stances. Meanwhile, those who listen more carefully, choose gentler words, and act more thoughtfully are often misunderstood as lacking backbone. But that's a shallow perspective, because those who can maintain kindness in anger, who can still show compassion when they're hurt, are the ones truly in control of themselves. Kindness does not mean being powerless. It's a deliberate choice not to let circumstances turn you into a bitter person. It's a quiet declaration that says, I will not allow negativity from the outside to define the essence within me. And you know what? Neuroscience today confirms that acts of kindness, even the smallest ones, like smiling at a stranger, helping someone pick up a dropped item, or simply holding the door for the next person, all activate the brain's reward system. Specifically, such actions release oxytocin and dopamine, making you feel connected, valued, and more motivated to live positively. Kindness, biologically speaking, is a way to build inner strength. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt deeply grateful because a stranger helped you with something small just at a moment when you were tired or lost? Maybe a driver who patiently waited for you to load your luggage, someone on the street who gave up their place when you were in a rush, or someone who listened to you without judgment. These seemingly trivial gestures can sometimes be the medicine that pulls a person out of a dark space, that restores faith in life. And you can be that person for someone else without needing to do anything grand. All it takes is holding on to your kindness in moments where most people would react with irritation, indifference, or coldness. Of course, there will be times when you feel like your kindness is being taken advantage of. And yes, some people will exploit your goodwill. But that doesn't make kindness wrong. It just means you need to pair your kindness with another skill: discernment. Kindness doesn't mean giving endlessly without conditions. It means choosing to respond with humanity while still maintaining clear boundaries. You can say no kindly. You can decline without hurting someone, and you can walk away from toxic relationships without losing the warmth in your heart. I've met many people who appeared successful, powerful, but lived with a cold, rigid demeanor. They earned fear but not trust. They built networks but not true connections. And during crises, they realized what they lacked wasn't another deal, another win, but a genuine embrace, an uncalculated act of care, a friend willing to listen without condition. And those things cannot be bought with power or money. They can only be sown through daily acts of kindness. If you want to make a lasting impact on others, not just convince them, but truly reach them, you must start with kindness. Because only when you're perceived as sincere will others open up to receive you. And only when you give kindness will you connect with the most beautiful parts of others, parts they usually hide out of fear of being hurt. When someone feels safe around you, they begin to show who they really are. And that's the deepest foundation of influence, a truth made visible thanks to the environment of goodness you create. You don't have to be perfect to be kind. In fact, it's precisely because we are not perfect that we need kindness so much. An ideal world is not a place where everyone is always right, but where people are willing to understand and help heal one another. Kindness is the bridge that helps you cross over differences, misunderstandings, and sometimes even the wounds you carry inside yourself. Choose kindness not because others deserve it, but because you deserve to live in the most beautiful state of your being. And if ever the world feels too cold, too aggressive, remember, you can be the one to start the shift with a simple act. A heartfelt thank you, a gentle gaze, a well-timed word withheld. These may seem small, but in a world filled with harsh noises, gentleness is the quietest and most enduring form of power. Kindness is not something you do when you're free, when you're in a good mood, or when everything is going smoothly. Kindness is a daily decision, even when you're tired, disappointed, or in pain. And if you can still keep a bright heart in those moments, then congratulations, you are not weak. You are far stronger than many who have mistaken kindness for weakness. Some doors only open when you're brave enough to say yes, not to the certain, not to the familiar, but to possibilities that have no clear name yet. Opportunities don't always arrive in recognizable forms. They often disguise themselves as an untested invitation, an unplanned trip, an unfamiliar friend, or a restless feeling urging you. This is the moment to open your heart. And if you've grown too accustomed to caution, too attached to what makes you feel safe, you'll easily miss the most magical thing life can offer: inner expansion. Saying yes to life doesn't mean unconditionally agreeing to everything. It means choosing to live with a mindset ready to explore, ready to step into experiences with no guarantee. Those yeses, whether to a career opportunity, a personal journey, or simply a proposal from someone you don't fully understand, can become the turning point that changes the entire trajectory of your life. The human mind has a natural defense mechanism. It always favors what's familiar. It's the brain's way of conserving energy, avoiding risks, maintaining stability. But that very mechanism, if left unmanaged, becomes the barrier that keeps you repeating the same old results. You cannot have a new life if you keep rejecting new experiences. The things that help you grow, become more resilient and insightful, don't come from your comfort zone. They come from the times you push past your own boundaries to discover a version of yourself that hasn't been awakened. Many people wait until they feel ready to begin, but you'll never be completely ready for a bigger life, because life always moves ahead of preparation. Pivotal moments don't arrive for those who know everything. They come to those who dare to try while still uncertain. And each time you say yes, you're sending a signal to your brain: I accept expansion. That acceptance changes how your nervous system responds to the world, from defensive to receptive. And that shift is essential for any real growth. I've met many people who told me their life changed just because of one single time they said yes to an invitation they were about to decline, an idea they almost dismissed, a person they nearly never saw again. And you too may realize that the moments you feel most grateful for didn't come from careful planning, but from intentional spontaneity, when you allowed yourself to move forward without certainty. Because yes is not naivete, it's the expression of aliveness within you. It's the voice from your deepest self, the part that always believes life is worth experiencing fully. But I understand saying yes isn't easy, especially for those who've been hurt, disappointed, or lost something after opening up. Past experiences make you more guarded, more cautious, more closed off. But if that closing off continues too long, it stops being protection and becomes imprisonment. You don't have to open up to everything, but you need to leave just enough space for life to enter. Because if you shut every door just because a single gust of wind once made you cold, you'll miss the sunlight behind that door. Saying yes is a skill, and like any skill, it must be practiced. You can start with the smallest things. Try a new dish, read a book from a genre you usually avoid, start a conversation with someone you've never spoken to, or simply agree to spend a day without a plan, letting intuition guide you. Each small act, when repeated, expands your psychological flexibility, which neuroscientists confirm is one of the core components of adaptability and long-term happiness. Life doesn't require you to always say yes, but life does need you not to always say no out of fear. Each time you say no to a new experience because you're afraid you won't be good at it, that it's not right for you, or that it's uncertain, you're rejecting your own potential for growth. And if you keep rejecting, you'll slowly shrink into a smaller version of yourself. Don't let that happen just because you were once hurt, because in the end, not every wound deserves to be held as a reason. Some wounds only heal when you keep moving forward. I'm not asking you to be reckless. I'm asking you to reconnect with the strongest part inside you, the part that's never been hurt by the world, the part still eager to explore, the part that was once a child believing every day was a miracle. That child never disappeared. It's just waiting for you to peel off the layers of doubt and call back the possibilities by name. You don't need to know exactly where you're going, but you need to be brave enough to take one step toward what makes your heart beat faster, one step toward what you've never dared to try, one step out of the place where you're just repeating old patterns, to touch the more vibrant version of who you are. And sometimes all you need to start a new chapter in life is to say yes, not to anyone else, but to yourself, to the part that wants to grow, to love more, to experience more, to the part that knows life doesn't wait for you to be certain, it only waits for you to be willing. And you are willing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have read this far. So the next time an opportunity knocks, don't let your old reflexes dismiss it too quickly. Pause for just a second, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what if this is the chance for me to live more authentically, more boldly, more freely? If your heart stirs even slightly, try trusting that, because life always reserves its best for those brave enough to say, yes, I'll try. There is a quiet yet profound moment when you look at your phone screen, now turned off, and realize you've just stepped out of the noise, the zone where notifications, messages, news feeds, and mindless scrolling have silently shaped your emotions and thoughts for years. We're living in a world where being constantly connected has become the norm, and stepping away from it is often seen as odd or outdated. But a deep truth is being forgotten. To connect deeply with yourself and with real life, you must first learn how to disconnect from what is not real. And the device in your hand, no matter how convenient, is not where your true values reside. I'm not against technology. I understand its role, but I also understand the neural mechanism of distraction. Every time you pick up your phone just to check one notification, your brain is pulled away from its thought process, away from inner awareness, and away from a state of deep presence. Every time you reflexively unlock your phone out of boredom, you are training your brain that boredom is something to escape rather than a signal to turn inward. The mind needs empty space to create, to heal, to form deep ideas. But that space is slowly disappearing in a society where every silent moment is filled with ringing sounds, blue lights, or endless content pouring in. Try to imagine a day without your phone. You wake up not to an app alarm, but because your body has had enough rest. You step outside, feel the sunlight on your skin, hear the birds singing, the wind moving through the window slats. You brew a cup of coffee without scrolling news while waiting. You eat breakfast without watching videos or listening to podcasts. It may sound simple, but these are real experiences, moments when your brain resynchronizes with the natural rhythm of life. You'll be surprised to find yourself thinking more deeply, feeling more clearly, and responding more slowly, but with awareness. That's when your nervous system exits the high limit state, fight or flight, caused by information overload, and returns to a state of physiological balance, where creativity, focus, and understanding begin to flourish. I've tried this small experiment with many people, asking them to turn off their phones completely for 4 hours a day for 1 week. The results? At first, restlessness, unease, the sense of missing something, but by day 3, most described a feeling that was both familiar and strange, the feeling of being themselves, not pulled by anything else. One said, I looked at my daughter longer during dinner. Another shared, I finally finished the book I had abandoned 2 years ago. And many admitted, for the first time in a long while, I could hear my own inner voice. None of this required any tools, just your willingness to disconnect. But why is something so simple so hard to do? Because tech platforms don't just sell convenience, they sell attachment in the neurological sense. Every notification, every like, every swipe releases a small amount of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that creates a sense of excitement. But that dopamine isn't deep or lasting. It's the kind that makes you repeat behaviors to maintain the good feeling, leading to dependency you don't even recognize. The danger is that dependency doesn't produce immediate consequences, but slowly erodes your ability to focus, lowers sleep quality, shortens attention span, and gradually detaches you from your authentic self. You don't need to completely cut off technology, but you do need to learn how to manage your time and how you use it. Set fixed offline hours each day. Make it a ritual. It could be 30 minutes in the early morning or an hour before bed. During that time, turn off all notifications, keep the phone out of reach, and choose an activity that brings you back to presence. Read a book, write by hand, take a walk outside, listen to instrumental music, or simply breathe deeply and look out the window. You'll witness something magical. A space opens up, not to be filled with more things, but so you can hear your own voice. Disconnection is also a form of reset. Just like rebooting your system, when your computer slows down, your brain and heart also need periodic renewal. Big decisions, deep insights, transformative realizations never arrive when you're scrolling. They only come when you're quiet enough to truly see yourself. And to become quiet, you must turn off the channels that scatter your focus. No one can do this for you, only you can. I'm not calling you to abandon technology. I'm calling you to become its master instead of letting it master you. Remember, the time you spend in the virtual world is time taken away from the real world. And each hour like that is an hour you can never get back. So, how will you use that time? To consume more of what doesn't help you grow, or to live slower, deeper, and more authentically? Try turning off your phone, not to escape, but to return to yourself, to the loved ones beside you, to the book you once promised to read, to the soft rhythm of real life, which has always been waiting for your return. Because happiness doesn't come from constant connection, but from the moments when you are truly present for yourself and the world around you. And sometimes all you need to do to switch real life back on is to turn off a phone. There are 3 things that may seem simple, but play a foundational role in a fulfilling life: rest, connection, letting go. Not because they are glamorous or produce immediate results, but because they are the natural movements of a healthy nervous system, a balanced mind, and a heart spacious enough to hold joy without losing itself. In a world that constantly urges you to do more, go faster, be better, sometimes what you truly need to feel whole is not one more thing to do, but something that must be released. Rest is not just pausing from work. It's a state where the body and mind enter a recovery cycle, where the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, the heart rate slows down, breathing deepens, and the brain regions responsible for creativity, memory, and emotion begin to regenerate. When you sleep well and rest properly, your brain doesn't just clear out mental clutter, it reorganizes information, consolidates learning, and enhances decision-making. Yet in reality, many people rest without feeling restored because they never truly disconnect. They call it rest while still clutching their phones, replying to emails, checking social media. That's not rest. That's just a change in the form of energy depletion. You need deep recovery, not just through sleep, but through moments where the mind isn't pulled outward. An unplanned afternoon, an hour of silence, a walk with no purpose. It's these quiet interludes that create inner resilience, helping you return to life with renewed energy, fresh perspectives, and a more sustainable rhythm. In a society that glorifies achievement, knowing when to rest is an act of courage. because you are choosing to preserve yourself rather than being swept into a never-ending race. Connection is the second key, but it cannot come from haste. We are born to connect. Your mind, with its entire mirror neuron system, is wired for sensing, empathizing, and sharing. But here's the paradox. The more connected you are to the virtual world, the more you lose your capacity to feel real connection. A face-to-face conversation with direct eye contact, uninterrupted by screens, a full, unhurried hug, a dinner without phones. These simple gestures, often dismissed, are the emotional nutrients every human needs to thrive from within. Connection doesn't come from the number of friends or level of engagement. It comes from the depth of presence. When you're truly present, listening without judgment, without the urge to respond quickly, the person across from you feels safe, and from that safety, deep bonds are formed. These relationships, whether with family, a partner, friends, or even a stranger you've helped, are the golden threads that keep your soul from feeling empty. Many people search for meaning and success, yet overlook the meaning found in human connection. No one truly lives a fulfilling life if they're alone in a room full of accolades but devoid of laughter. And then finally, letting go, the hardest act, yet the most liberating. We often cling to the past as if it's an inseparable part of ourselves, holding on to pain, failures, unmet expectations, holding on to fated relationships we're afraid to leave, holding on to versions of ourselves that are outdated. But no true fulfillment comes from clinging to what no longer fits. Letting go isn't losing. Letting go is clearing space so something new can arrive. Letting go is a skill, not born of logic, but from an inner maturity that recognizes holding on no longer helps. You don't need to erase memories or pretend to be strong. You just need enough honesty to ask yourself, does this still nourish me? And if the answer is no, gently lay it down. Whether it's a relationship, a role, an old dream, or part of your personality that once protected you, but now holds you back. True growth doesn't come from how much you can do, but from knowing what to keep and what to release. When you know how to rest, you no longer run in exhaustion. When you know how to truly connect, you are no longer lonely in a crowd. When you know how to let go at the right time, you are no longer dragged backward by the past. And these three movements, simple but profound, will return you to the original state of a whole human being. Not needing to prove anything, not chasing to feel enough, not needing to win to feel worthy. You don't have to change your entire life in a single day. Just spend one evening truly resting, one conversation where you truly connect, one small thing you dare to let go of, one step each day. And then you'll see fulfillment is not a distant goal. It's what you are already living each moment with presence and gratitude. Life never promises to be easy, but if you know how to rest, connect, and let go, it becomes richer, more meaningful, and infinitely more precious.